Since 1962, Cuba has been the target of economic warfare in the form of the U.S. embargo and sanctions. Today, Cuba is a symbol of sustainable agriculture and food security for nations recovering from colonialism. Let's consult history to see how farming in Cuba has been a tool of resistance and liberation. Under Spanish colonial rule, enslaved African people on plantations farmed commodities like sugar, tobacco, and coffee that the wealthy white enslavers sold to Western markets. Even after slavery was abolished in 1886 and Cuba gained its independence from Spain in 1902, the exploitation of farm workers continued. Cuba was under American imperialist control. Sugar represented 80% of Cuba's exports, and nearly all large farms on the island were owned by U.S. companies and wealthy landlords. These companies controlled local politics to keep wages low and working conditions poor, and the U.S. ambassador dictated policy to the Cuban government.
The good earth of the tropics and the eager markets of the north are an unbeatable combination. A cup of coffee is as much a part of the American way of living as a daily newspaper, and a table without a sugar bowl is hard to find.
Campesinos and macheteros, tens of thousands of whom were the descendants of African slaves, lived in abysmal conditions. Macheteros, sugarcane cutters, could only find work during the harvest, so they were perpetually unemployed, in debt, and existing on the brink of survival. Rural peasants were malnourished. Because the government was often acting as a puppet for U.S. companies, the Cuban countryside was sorely underdeveloped. There were very few accessible hospitals and schools, and most peasants were illiterate. The conditions of some workers on plantations were comparable to slavery. Landowners had control over life and death for their employees, and Fulgencio Batista's rural guard terrorized campesinos and often kept them from leaving the plantation or fighting for better conditions. Despite repression and poverty, the campesinos organized a resistance. Peasants provided guerrilla fighters with food and a place to hide in the Sierra Maestra Mountains. Long before Fidel Castro and his guerrillas liberated the territory, the peasants of Sierra Cristal had spent decades battling against the dispossession of their lands and were already well organized. For both the peasants and the guerrillas, this was a transformative experience. The rebels entered Sierra Maestra knowing that Batista's government had to go. They left as revolutionaries, the ideas shaped by the anti-impression embedded in peasant politics. The identities of campesino and revolutionary became fluid as more people joined the rebel army, and 3/4 of the army were peasants. Long-standing black socialist peasant leaders became close collaborators with the revolutionary movement. The peasants argued for specific land reform policies that should be implemented nationwide if the rebels took power. The rebels who made it to Havana listened.
From his stronghold in the wild Sierra Maestra Mountains, Cuba's Fidel Castro emerged triumphant after 2 years of guerrilla warfare against the Batista regime.
After the revolutionaries ousted Batista from power in 1959, a series of agrarian reform laws redistributed the land to those who worked it. The revolutionaries nationalized 480,000 acres of land owned by U.S. corporations and built cooperative farms to diversify food production and eliminate rural poverty. The U.S. government swiftly responded by blockading Cuba, but the people continued to build their new sovereign agricultural system.
Ya que nuestra reforma agraria afectó intereses de grandes compañías norteamericanas. A nosotros nos hacían la guerra por hacer la reforma agraria. United Fruit Company.
This new era in Cuban history saw a massive increase in food production and individual nutrition, as well as guaranteeing quality health care, full education, and stable housing to all people.
With the revolution, there were radical changes. For example, I started thinking about being a doctor when I was a child. And to become a doctor, the only cost was to be a good student. My parents didn't have to pay or do anything for that. I started studying, and I worked hard, and I went to the university. And now I'm a doctor.
National and cooperative farms drastically increased production of beans, rice, corn, and potatoes to feed the island's population. Many see these revolutionary policies as beginning the long and ongoing process of dismantling racial and class inequality, lifting masses of people out of extreme poverty and drastically improving the quality of life for the working class. These campesino struggles show us that it is people, not a few individuals, who shape history. Cuba's agrarian reforms represented resistance, not only against the exploitation of farmers by plantation owners, but also against global systems of capitalism, imperialism, and white supremacy that denied working-class Cubans national sovereignty and the ability to determine their destinies.